Good morning. We're breaking from our regular broadcast to bring you live coverage of the second main session of the APEC leaders meeting. Today is the final day of APEC here in South Korea at the city of Gyeongju. Session 2, under the theme of Asia-Pacific Vision, Prepare for Future Changes, will see leaders discuss new growth engines, including artificial intelligence and demographic change. Arirang News has been following this event from the very beginning, and in just a moment we'll take you live to the floor as President Lee opens the second session. But first, to help us understand what's at stake, we're joined by Professor Yang Jun-seok of the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
Now, let's just start with what's going to happen in a few moments. What are we expecting from President Lee Jae-myung's speech at session 2?
Okay, well, this is going to be, well, he'll have maybe one or two more chances to make a wide speech. But because this is going to be a period where all the leaders are going to be speaking in turn, I think he'll concentrate on policy issues that deals with not just the APEC area presently, but for the future. So I'm sure that there will be some elements of open trade, regional cooperation, and then on future policy-wise, AI. And APEC is often very interested in things like how to deal with disasters, natural disasters, and how to cooperate among the members on various future changes. Demographics was mentioned. Almost all countries in APEC are losing young population. So those are the type of things that they're probably going to be talking about. But President Lee will probably concentrate on trade issues and AI issues.
Right, and that has been talked about so far many times throughout the event. But what we do see that happened overnight, because we talked yesterday morning, was like the Jensen Huang, the leader of NVIDIA, is at Gyeongju.
Right,
so.
But in this context, you don't want to be too proud of what's happening in your country, because this is a cooperative venture. So if he's going to talk about things then about AI, then I don't think he's going to talk about how this is going to make Korea great. I think he'll be going to concentrate on how other countries can cooperate with Korea to make AI more usable in the regional economies, and hopefully they'll also talk about things like technical cooperation between some countries which are yet to catch up with some of the AI developments. But again, because this is an international context, and APEC, the last C stands for cooperation. So saying Korea has got this great deal from Jensen Huang, it's not something that you want to perhaps overemphasize. You want to show that, yes, we have this great deal, but we'll be using it so that we can grow together.
Right. I think you bring up a great point. So it's about the multilateral event, not about South Korea, and it is the host nation. But going back to the discussion about AI, South Korea actually sees this as an opportunity to sort of take the lead in global cooperation. So while it's not about boosting South Korea's economy, but it's about maybe for President Lee Jae-myung boosting South Korea's role.
It's also boosting South Korea's visibility. Now, there's several, obviously the two biggest AI countries are US and China. They're very much far ahead. There's a lot of countries that are shooting for the third place. Korea is definitely one of them, but so are some European countries as well as some Asian countries. And right now, Korea is positioned to become a firm third place runner in that race. And what hopefully President Lee will emphasize is that AI is going to be very useful for the future. It will increase the country's productivity, but some of the countries are not yet ready to completely utilize AI tools, sometimes because there's no hardware or infrastructure yet available, sometimes because education is not yet up to the level of fully utilizing AI. Remember, yesterday Huang emphasized Korea has the three elements: manufacturing, software, and infrastructure, and Korea may offer to strengthen those three areas in some of the countries that have fallen behind in that aspect. Remember, APEC has 21 economies. Some of them are very advanced. Some of them are developing. So that's one of the factors about pillars of APEC, technical cooperation.
Right, and we do talk a lot about the middle nations of APEC members. So they have sort of a stage for them to speak out about themselves, and the visibility aspect is very important, of course. And what we're seeing right now is the leaders of the APEC members coming into the room for the session 2. We're going to be bringing you the speech by President Lee Jae-myung, which will open this session under the theme of Asia-Pacific Vision, Prepare for Future Changes. Now, we're expected to hear more about President Lee Jae-myung's ideas on new growth engines, including artificial intelligence and demographic change. Once again, we are bringing you the live scenes from the session 2, which is about to start in Gyeongju. Now, again, Professor, you did say that when it comes to artificial intelligence, the top 2 nations right now are U.S. and China. What do you see in terms of rivalry? I mean, President Trump obviously left early before APEC main session started. Did you see any rivalry in this scene of multilateral event?
Okay, not in this event particularly, but the United States has some restrictions on exports of state-of-the-art AI-related chips to China. In the latest trade negotiations, they were talking about loosening those restrictions. I don't think they reached any firm result in the last set of negotiations, but they are continually negotiating over the subject. And because the United States had restricted some of this technology, China perhaps has decided that they need to be more independent from American technology. So they developed technology like the DeepSeek, which is somewhat independent from American technology. They're also developing their own semiconductors, including AI semiconductors. There's some conflict over how developed these Chinese chips are. Some people claim that they come very close to the quality of U.S. chips. Others say that they're still far behind. On the other hand, companies like NVIDIA, they have lost a lot of sales because of that technical export restriction. And now NVIDIA, as well as the United States, may be seeking to take some of that market back for the United States and NVIDIA because, well, from their point of view, they may not want the Chinese AI to develop a completely separate set of technology. They want the Chinese AI to use some of the American AI, but we'll have to see how how Chinese chooses their strategy. But again, Korea right now seems to be in competition for third place. Mm-hmm. We're actually doing very good in a lot of areas of AI, but so are some of the other countries, France in particular, I think. And this type of cooperation between NVIDIA and United States and China, with Korea in somewhat of a middle, that may give us a very good, that may put us in a very good place to put us in, definitely in the third place in the AI race.
Right. So once again, we're about to start with the President Lee Jae-myung's speech. We see Chinese President Xi Jinping, who's, of course, the next host of APEC, just stepped in for the session 2. Once the speech starts, we'll tune in. But for now, Professor Yang, before we do, we're more than halfway through APEC, right? Like there's a sort of preliminary events also, you know, from the past. What would you say is sort of like the scorecard for South Korea as the host so far?
Okay, well, I think we're doing definitely better than what some people feared because China and the United States was in such conflict. Personally, I was a lot worried about APEC last year. And Because if the hostilities between China and U.S. had continued on the level that we saw last year, then we may not have gotten any multilateral results for APEC this year, but that does not seem to be the case. Things are always sort of hectic around the time when we have leaders' declaration. And this year,
Professor. Yeah. We'll get back to it, and I would love to hear more the rest of your answer. But at the moment, President Lee Jae-myung has arrived and has taken a seat to start off this session 2. So we're going to tune in.
네, APEC 회원 경제 지도자 여러분,
Leaders of APEC member countries,
선보인 한국 음식
did you enjoy
어땠는지 모르겠습니다.
our Korean food and culture performance last night?
오늘은
Like the theme of yesterday's performance, we are going to talk about the blueprint for the sustainable future. I hope that yesterday's performance gave you more inspiration.
네, 괜찮아요?
We're trying to check the interpretation
칠레가 잘 안 들리는 모양입니다.
on site.
네.
Okay.
그럼 지금부터
So let us now begin
제32차
the 32nd
경제 지도자
APEC
회의
Economic Leaders Meeting,
리트리트 세션을 시작하겠습니다.
the second day's session.
의제에 관해서 소개를
About
드리도록
the
하겠습니다.
agenda I'd like to
우리
introduce.
APEC은
APEC,
지난 수십 년간
for the
당면한
last
현 세계
decades,
경제의 과제들을
we
해결할
have
아이디어
come together
인큐베이터로
and had acted as an idea
전통을 이어받아 오늘 이
incubator
자리에서도
for the
AI와
solutions
인구구조 변화라는
to the
공통의 과제에 대한
economic
창의적인 해법을 함께
problems. And also, I hope that we can come together this time to have wise resolutions to our current issues. We have the potential to preemptively respond to the current issues. According to a survey of AI countries around the world, 5 are APEC countries, and also the APEC powerhouses. All of them are APEC countries. So the societal and environmental environment should be set so that it could be favorable for AI to advance. And the Republic of Korea, in order to, we are going to focus all our power to nurture this AI infrastructure, and this goes to HR nurturing and thereby revitalizing the AI ecosystem. And we are going to be at the forefront so that we can forge an environment that's an innovative environment for AI to strive. And what is more important is the AI-based society, AI for all. The Republic of Korea will strive to become a global AI basic society, and we are going to make this a basic initiative so that we can become one of the leaders around the world for AI. And AI, this big reform that is coming, this is our willingness to make this and to earn this ourselves. And the Asia Pacific AI Center that we are going to open, this has a purpose to narrow the widening gap of AI capacity, and this will in return contribute to the big initiative of AI and its ecosystem around the world. The Republic of Korea we are going to flourish this with coexistence and prosperity together with everyone. And another problem is the demographic changes. And according to a survey, for the last 30 years, this demographic changes had been changing. And we are seeing a sigignificant drop in the young people of population, and more than 65-year-old seniors are on the rise. And such demographic change has an impact on all corners of society, to labor, to education. So this is a big crisis that we are facing, and that is why we cannot resolve this with partial solutions. The Republic of Korea, for us to come up with a coordinated resolution, we have proposed a framework that will bring forward a very unique and proprietary idea to respond to this demographic changes. In order for us to address this AI and demographic changes, we have to look into new driving forces, and the Republic of Korea is looking at the culture and creative economy as a solution. And as of 2022, the Republic of Korea is going to work towards this regard, and as of 2022, the APEC countries are at the center of this culture and creative economy industry, and the value of creative and cultural economy and the industry is the cornerstone for the future development. And we believe that this will be a great help in helping us to flourish with AI and to respond to demographic changes. And today, we are going to talk about the APEC vision for the future. AI, the demographic changes, cultural and creativity industry. Based on these three prongs, we are going to talk about and discuss our response so that the prosperity of Asia Pacific can be seen and the world. And we are also going to, we would look forward to your valuable contribution so that we can look forward to our prosperous future. So when the press corps retrieves, we are going to resume with our meeting. So I would like to ask the press corps to retrieve as promptly as possible.
That was President Lee Jae-myung opening the Session 2 of APEC leaders meeting on the second and last day of the forum. Now, he's touched on a number of items. He's first, checked back on how they were doing because of the big event last night, and sort of talked about AI and sort of acting as the incubator for solutions to economic problems for the APEC, the group itself. Now, he did speak a lot about what South Korea has been doing and to tackle some of the challenges right now. And one of the things that are going to be discussed right now is the demographics change, which South Korea, of course, has a national crisis with, right? So first, what did you think about the second speech? We were looking at speeches all, throughout the past few days.
Okay, well, two things hit me. First is that he did talk a lot about AI. He did talk a little bit about cooperation between Korea and other APEC economies, but perhaps not as much as I expected. In the past, one of the biggest issues that's been in the APEC is digital divide. how some countries are far ahead, other countries are not, and even within countries, there is some segment who do not use the digital technologies. So I think the AI sort of divide that he talked about fits into this theme, but I expected perhaps a bit more talk about cooperation than what we had, but it was a fairly good speech overall. Demographic changes, Korea is known to have the worst situation here, but the second worst is Hong Kong. And perhaps the third and fourth biggest is China and areas around China. Virtually all APEC economies, except perhaps Indonesia and Malaysia, are suffering from slow population growth, changes in the balance toward the old, and even in the countries which are in the American continent, United States, they are becoming more and more worried about demographics as well. So this is going to be a big issue. Problem is, no one's really quite sure how to solve it.
Right, right. And it's a challenge, definitely. But I would like to also highlight the fact that Gyeongju Declaration is something that everyone has been anticipating, especially in South Korea, with that possibly being the best sort of success story as a host nation. What does it mean to adopt this by the members?
Okay, well, every year they try to come up with leaders' declaration, and on top of that, if they feel strongly about some issues, then they will have some sort of a vision statement or an action statement. Right now, the APEC is working under the so-called Putrajaya Vision 2040, which means open and dynamic, resilient, and peaceful Asian Pacific community by 2040. Before that, they had the Bogo Wars, which lasted up to 2020, open and free trade within the APEC region. So sometimes they do offer a vision like that. Right now, because we are working under the Putrajaya vision, I don't think they'll come up with a new vision statement. They may have some kind of action plan which works under this vision, like the Busan roadmap that they had in 2005. But right now, those type of things are very difficult because of the trade war between the China and U.S. I think the best that we can reasonably hope for is some kind of a unified vision of what they want for the Asian Pacific region. So obviously regional integration is going to be there. We're not quite sure if free trade is going to be there. But we are also probably going to have a lot of statements on what kind of cooperative endeavors that APEC is expected to have in the future. So basically this will be sort of a summary of where the member economies think APEC is now. And if there's sufficient agreement on that status, then we will get a unified statement. But it hasn't happened often, but there has been years when they could not agree. I don't think this is going to be one of those years. This atmosphere has been better than I expected.
Right, and it was. It seemed like it could be one of those years building up to APEC, right?
So last year, as I said, I did not expect things to go this well, at least in terms of members getting along with each other. But this year has been actually, I think, better than a lot of people expected, including myself. So I think we will come up with the unified declaration. Problem is what's going to be in it. I'm sure the people who are working on it are fiddling around with the last details. There are always one or two countries which want something added or subtracted. So there's probably diplomats going around frantically dealing with one or two sentences right now.
Right, right. And there's something that I actually would like to bring up because it wasn't mentioned enough, is climate change. That has been sort of the easy topic for everyone to kind of get on board, but that's not talked about it, often here at APEC for this year. Okay,
well, let's APEC is actually a year-long activity, and the leaders meeting that we're having currently is sort of the climax of the entire year activity. there's actually major meetings throughout the year. The biggest, there's three biggest meetings are called SOM, Senior Officers Meeting, and they encompass a wide array of policies, not only trade, but gender issues, education issues, health issues, disaster relief, and so on and so on. And climate change was a big factor in those activities. But when it comes to the leader's statement, as I said, you have to get approval from all 21 members. And there's a couple of members, especially United States, which recently, during the Trump administration, has not been very happy about anything that deals with climate issues. So it might have been underemphasized strategically because Korea is a host country.
That's a good point. It might have been omitted or less spoken about on purpose, right? All right, well, that's all the time we have for, with you, Professor Yang. Thank you so much again for helping us out.
Thank you.
Now we continue with the rest of today's news. Our special APEC coverage continues as Arirang News brings you team coverage of South Korea's role as host nation of this year's APEC Forum. With that, we turn to our studio in the historic city of Gyeongju, where my colleague Kim Dami is standing by. Dami, welcome back.
Doyeon, Gyeongju has woken up to another sunny but also windy day this morning. The neighborhood has been under tight traffic control, but just now that's been lifted. Things are up and going, ready for day two. Now, and in the meantime, we continue our coverage of APEC here in the host city. It's shaping up to be another busy day packed with high-level meetings and summit diplomacy. We first go live to the International Media Center, where our presidential office correspondent Song Yujin is standing by. Yujin, we just heard President Lee deliver his opening remarks to start session two. What can we expect from here?
Well, good morning, Tommy. So the 21 APEC member economies are expected to really discuss how to better respond together to shared challenges, such as the rapid development of artificial intelligence and also to aging and shrinking populations, which were also highlighted by President Lee during his opening remarks that we just saw. So the theme of today's session, which is the second and last session of this year's APEC leaders meeting, is preparing a future-ready Asia-Pacific. So first, take a listen to what National Security Advisor Wee Sung-rak previously said on the significance of today's discussions.
For the first time, this year's APEC leaders meeting will discuss how to respond to future-oriented challenges such as AI and demographic change. Our government will encourage member economies to share best practices and to work toward common solutions so that we can plan for the future together.
Now, Tommy, as you know, one of the biggest questions going into the APEC leaders meeting was whether a joint declaration could be adopted because it requires a unanimous approval at a time of rising geopolitical tensions. However, this morning we heard from the presidential office that the APEC leaders' Gyeongju declaration, along with two additional documents on artificial intelligence and demographic change, is expected to be formally endorsed at the end of session two. Now, afterward, President Lee will hand over the APEC chair to next year's host, Chinese President Xi Jinping. That will be followed by the traditional group photo with participating leaders wearing a modern take on a traditional Korean scarf. And then President Lee will wrap up his APEC duties by holding a press conference right here at the International Media Center this afternoon.
Right, Yujin, that marks the end of APEC 2025 at Korea today on Saturday, but the President's Day isn't over yet, right?
You're definitely right, Tommy. That's because President Lee will be holding his very first summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is making a state visit to South Korea for the first time in 11 years. So their meeting this afternoon will begin by Xi signing the guest book, a photo session, then a welcoming ceremony, followed by talks. So yesterday, presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung gave a preview on what the two leaders will discuss. Take a listen.
Under the shared principle that people's livelihoods come first, the two leaders are expected to take up ways to address livelihood issues in both countries. In that same context, they are also expected to discuss peace and the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
So after their talks, there will be a state dinner. Now, attention is on whether the EEC summit could mark a turning point in Seoul-Beijing relations, which have been strained in recent years. Now, with that, President Lee will wrap up his very intensive week of summit diplomacy here in Gyeongju. However, tomorrow he is scheduled to meet with Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who is making an official visit to South Korea in Seoul. So the president will be continuing his series of bilateral talks in the capital. Tommy, back to you.
All right, thanks Eugene for that report. That was our Song Eugene live from the International Media Center. And ahead of the much-anticipated EEC summit later this afternoon, North Korea is not hesitating to give Seoul and Beijing a piece of its mind, and what's being seen as an attempt to pressure China. Our An Sung-jan reports.
North Korea has condemned the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula as a pipe dream. This comes as South Korea and China prepare to hold summit talks on the issue on the sidelines of the APEC economic leaders meeting in Gyeongju on Saturday. According to the North State media, the Korean Central News Agency, North Korean Vice Foreign Minister Park Myung-ho said on Friday that no matter how many times denuclearization is raised, the North will remain patient, insisting it is a pipe dream that can never be realized. He went on to say that denying the DPRK status as a nuclear weapons state and clinging to what he called the daydream of denuclearization shows what he described as a lack of common sense on the part of the ROK. Seoul says President Lee Jae-myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping plan to put denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula on the agenda, along with efforts to secure peace, which the South Korean side frames as directly tied to people's livelihoods. Analysts say North Korea's statement released ahead of the EEC talks is both a backlash against South Korea's presidential office and a way to pressure Beijing. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
It's been a week of intense diplomacy here in Gyeongju, especially for the South Korean leader. And he is now left with his first summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping this afternoon. Will the EEC summit reshape Seoul-Beijing relations? For that, we turn to our foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young. Good morning, Soo-young.
Good morning, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, President Xi Jinping is in South Korea on a state visit for the first time in 11 years, isn't he?
Yes, that's right. And in 11 years, that would be the first time since July 2014, when he made his state visit to South Korea under the presidency of then President Park Geun-hye.
Right.
And this was a very noteworthy event for many observers because it's the first time that a Chinese leader visited South Korea ahead of North Korea. And particularly surprising as Park Geun-hye was a conservative government, which is traditionally leaning more towards the US than China. So this really sent out back then two signals. The first was that China, back then at least, was willing to deepen its economic and political relations with South Korea. And second, it wanted to express strong dissatisfaction over North Korea's ongoing ballistic missile program and, of course, its nuclear program. So this was a strong signal. But, of course, nowadays, many things have changed. Geopolitical conditions have changed, especially after China imposed a series of economic sanctions and measures against South Korean businesses over their anger because Seoul decided to install THAAD batteries, so US missile defense systems, in its own national defense against North Korean missiles and its nuclear threat. And Beijing perceived this as a direct security threat from Washington to China. So since then, relations have soured, and the ongoing US-China rivalry hasn't helped because now both sides are pressuring South Korea and many other middle powers to align with either the US and China. But for Korea, this is practically impossible because the US is our largest security partner. So moving away from it is pretty much impossible, both militarily and ideologically. And China is our neighbor, so geographically it's impossible to move away from China. So relations have been precarious between Seoul and Beijing at best.
So much has changed, both at home and abroad, especially regarding Korean Peninsula issues. Now, Soo-young, it is the first summit between Yi and Xi, but how has the actual engagement been between the two leaders so far?
surprisingly quieter than initially thought. So because President Lee Jae-myung is known as a progressive politician, it was assumed that given his given that he's in the Democratic Party of Korea, which is traditionally more aligned with Beijing, that relations between the two countries would soon warm up, especially after the leadership of now impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. But since he came to office, President Lee Jae-myung has been trying to practice pragmatic diplomacy. And this means pursuing South Korea's own national interests, not being tied to ideology or geography or whatever, but making a rational decision and being flexible about South Korea's own strategic interests. And in doing so, he's made it perfectly clear that he does not wish to distance himself from the United States. And at the same time, he wants to maintain stable relations with China. So in doing so, he's issued related statements, and also the first week that he took office, he made the point of calling the Chinese leader Xi Jinping third in his list of world leaders.
Right.
So this came after President Donald Trump and then Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, and Xi Jinping came third. And this was a huge contrast to his progressive predecessor, then President Moon Jae-in, who called China second after the US when he first became president. So China, according to foreign policy circles in Seoul, has been quite dissatisfied with this kind of alignment towards Washington, and also concerned, especially after President Lee Jae-myung said in Washington that the era of South Korea relying on the US for security and trade on China is now over. South Korea must work with the US on both fronts for both traditional and economic security. But that's not to say that President Lee hasn't been working on China relations. He sent National Speaker Won Sik to the quite controversial Victory Day parade in China on September 3rd, and that's the second highest political figure in South Korea. And more recently, he appointed as ambassador to China the eldest son of former President Roh Jae-on, who is highly regarded in Beijing because of his father's contribution to bilateral ties. In 1992, he was considered the architect of normalizing relations between South Korea and China in modern-day history. So we'll have to see today whether relations will warm up significantly, but that's been the course of events.
President Lee Jae-myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping have a lot of business to get down to this afternoon, including China's unofficial ban on Korean pop culture known as Hallyu. Now, what is the current situation on that official ban?
Right, so this unofficial ban on Korea's cultural content began in 2017, after, again, as South Korea said that it would install US missile defense batteries on the Korean Peninsula. Along with other economic measures against the Korean economy, China decided to also put an effective ban on Korea's cultural industries, from gaming to films, K-dramas, and also K-pop. And now it maintains that there was never an official ban. So there was a lot of bureaucracy officially. So now Korean cultural contents to appear on Chinese television, to stage K-pop concerts, they require approval and review from the Chinese government, but they've been routinely denied. So officially this is due to red tape or bureaucratic slowness or complications, but unofficially and more realistically it's been a ban against Hallyu or Korean contents.
Now, apart from the cultural stuff, now how are Yi and Xi expected to discuss, trade and economic cooperation, especially followed by the summit between President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping? I mean, they have reached the consensus, but the trade war appears to be not over yet, as far as I understand.
Right, exactly. So as we discussed before, this tit-for-tat kind of retaliation between the US and China, it will presumably continue for some time, because the battle for now over minerals and soybeans and so on and so forth, fentanyl, the battle is over, but the war definitely isn't. So South Korean firms remain highly cautious and rather anxious about their long-term investments and business with China. And well, in order to reassure Korean businesses, there needs to be be a certain level of stability here, but that's been rather difficult, especially over an almost decade-long period of time after China again imposed a comprehensive series of economic retaliation measures against the Korean economy. The effects of that have been long-lasting and they haven't been fully lifted, including on cultural contents, of course. So President Yi is expected to raise this in his talks with President Xi to promote, exchanges economically and trade, and to provide some kind of, some kind of reassurance for Korean businesses. So he'll be signaling to Xi that we want something more definitive.
Well, I'm sure he will be seeking mutual benefits that will satisfy both sides. Then now North Korea will no doubt be on the agenda for the day. Do you think South Korea will once again ask China to play a constructive role in dealing with Korean Peninsula issues and North Korea's nuclear program?
Most definitely. I mean, that has definitely always been Seoul's MO when it comes to China. It always asks China to use its influence to pressure or at least convince its smaller neighbour to, move to a better path and, give up its nuclear weapons and move towards peace and prosperity in the region. And this request will come, after President Xi stood alongside, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin in September during China's Victory Day parade. And the three seem to present this very concerning sort of unity against, the rules-based international order, and especially against Western countries, and that nowadays includes South Korea, right? So after that, there have been growing concerns, especially as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and President Xi Jinping, when they sat down in September in their bilateral summit, in their readout, there was no mention of denuclearization.
Right.
And in all of their previous summits, they had always mentioned denuclearization. And of course, this was when North Korea was looking to negotiate with the US. But at the same time, China was clearly trying to play a role in bringing North Korea to the table. But it's now very concerning whether China is, backtracking from that and whether it's enabling North Korea even. And while President Yi today will definitely be asking Beijing once again to play a constructive role, and the foreign ministers meeting between the two countries in September, very shortly after Xi and Kim's meeting, our foreign minister Cho Hyun has told media that he felt reassured that China's position on denuclearization remains unchanged and China continues to wish for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. But bringing in the leaders to say that and having President Xi Jinping on board, that would definitely be much more helpful. And of course, we mentioned North Korea saying this morning that it basically doesn't care if China and South Korea talk.
Well, it sounded quite anti, though.
Right, and that's of course its usual acerbic kind of rhetoric, right? But experts this morning, who I've been messaging, have noted that this is North Korea still rather toning down what it actually could have said out of respect for Xi Jinping. So this indicates that it's definitely watching.
Well, we do know for sure that North Korea is closely following the upcoming Yi-Xi summit. Now, Su-young, there's another issue between Seoul and Beijing. China has been installing illegal structures between the two borders, the sea border, since 2018. 2018, and now. That's illegal under the existing agreements. Will that be brought up this time or no?
It's certainly expected to be brought up. Our foreign minister has brought it up in his meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in September. And as you said, China since 2018 has been installing at least a dozen of these massive, some are quite large, these steel structures or platform-like structures. And China has been claiming that these are for fish farming, so it's saying they're, for aquaculture purposes. But South Korea, along with a bunch of experts, international media, are very concerned that this is China employing its usual grey zone tactics that we're seeing in the South China Sea. So it's making these unofficial kind of, territory, encroachments into the provisional maritime zone between South Korea and China that was forged in 2001, because their maritime claims, they overlap, and they decided to jointly operate the region, and China is breaking that rule. So what South Korea is doing by raising raising this over the past few months very sharply, is trying to nip this in the bud so that this doesn't turn into a stronger jurisdictional claim by China in the coming months or years.
Well, the two leaders have a lot on their shoulders in the afternoon here in Gyeongju. Let's see how that unfolds.
Yes,
thanks for coming in tonight. This morning, Soo-young, sorry, I saw you last night, so it feels like a continuation
You're
of
working around
the coverage.
The clock, Tammy.
All right, I'll see you later.
Thanks very much.
And meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed dissatisfaction with his Asia trip, highlighting the warm reception he received in South Korea. He told reporters on board Air Force One en route to Florida on Friday that summits with South Korea, China, and Japan had been wonderful. Referring to the ROK-U.S. summit, Trump said that people must have seen how he was treated in South Korea, asserting that America is being respected again. Now, his remarks appear to refer to gifts he received from South Korea, such as a replica gold crown and the Grand Order of Mugunghwa. And on day one of the first full official APEC day on Friday yesterday, President Lee Jae-myung bonded with the leaders of the UAE, the Philippines, and Chile. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
President Lee Jae-myung held several summits on Friday, bonding ties with other leaders of APEC members. During the summit with the Philippines, President Lee underlined how this year marks the first anniversary of establishing a strategic partnership between the two and agreed to continue working closely for more cooperation.
아주 많은 세월 동안 한국과 필리핀이 우방 국가로서 서로 지원하고 협력해 왔지만 오늘 우리 대통령님 방문을 계기로 앞으로 더 높은 단계의 밀도 있는 협력 관계가 맺어지기를 기대합니다.
We have already reached several milestones, one of which was the bilateral free trade agreement and also our cooperations in areas of defense and security, amongst other key areas of mutual interest.
While welcoming President Gabriel Boric Fon's first visit to Korea, President Lee noted that Chile has established itself as a key partner in the region.
최초로 대한민국을 승인한다든지 또 최초로 FTA를 체결한다든지 어떤 여러 면에서 대한민국과 특별한 관계를 맺고 있습니다.
In the early 2000s, we signed an FTA. I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize that Chile is strongly committed to improving the FTA with Korea.
To this suggestion, President Lee proposed exploring mutually beneficial solutions in FTA improvement talks. Regarding talks on cooperation in critical minerals and renewable energy, the two agreed that combining Korea's manufacturing technology with Chile's abundant energy and mineral resources could create great synergy. These summits were after President Lee met with Crown Prince Khaled bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi earlier in the morning. Referring to the UAE as the only country in the Middle East that maintains a special strategic partnership with the Republic of Korea, President Lee underlined how the two countries hold great potential in cultural cooperation and expressed hopes for the UAE to play a significant role in helping to promote the spread of K-culture, which is currently gaining great popularity across the Middle East. The Crown Prince underlined how the UAE's relationship with South Korea is a special and important one, saying what makes it special is that it is built on trust. Pointing out that strengthening ties and cooperation among Asian nations is also a priority for the UAE, he invited Lee to visit Abu Dhabi in November. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, after delivering his speech at this year's APEC CEO Summit on Friday, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang held a press conference with reporters. Huang told Arirang News that he was very optimistic about the future of South Korea's AI sector, saying it's now NVIDIA's turn to grow through the journey of AI, as the company had received a warm welcome from Korea when it entered the country 30 years ago. Our Park Jun-an tells us more.
After announcing a mega 260,000 chip supply deal on Friday with the South Korean government, Samsung Electronics, SK Group, Hyundai Motor Group, and Naver Cloud, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the world's largest chip maker, held a press briefing. Huang told Arirang TV that he was very optimistic about South Korea's future in AI.
There's no question in my mind that Korea will build many more AI factories here. not just for the Korean industry, which is one of the largest economies in the world and one of the largest technology industries in the world, but also because Korea has a chance to be an AI hub of the region. And it has the ability to attract startups that are in other countries to be hosted on Korea AI Cloud.
Also, when Arirang TV asked what Huang's message was for people in South Korea who admire him and his company NVIDIA's vision, he said, now it's NVIDIA growing with Korea on their AI journey.
Korea has welcomed me for 30 years with open arms. And NVIDIA was very young when I first came. We were only a few years old. So we've had a very long relationship and one that I treasure greatly. And now we have a new journey. You know, in the beginning it was Korea growing with NVIDIA's journey. Now it's NVIDIA growing with Korea's journey and the journey of AI. So I'm very grateful.
After the broadcast media scrum ended, Huang held a second media session without video or audio recording, responding to reporters' questions in a casual setting. During the session, he again emphasized the strong partnership between industry leaders in South Korea.
NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said he's so confident in South Korea's semiconductor technology that his company will partner with South Korean industry giants in the decades to come. Park Junan, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
And now, the first day of the two-day APEC leaders meeting wrapped up with the leaders' Gala Dinner. And at this year's edition, Korean-American star chef Edward Lee took the lead, making it even more special. Our culture correspondent Park Go-na delivers that taste from Gyeongju.
400 guests fascinated by an authentic Korean-style meal served during the Economics Leaders Gala Dinner on Friday. Featuring Gyeongju specialties such as premium beef for galbichim or braised short ribs, and local greens for bibimbap, mixed rice with soy sauce and sesame oil, along with side dishes of tofu and white kimchi, were only some of the highlights. Behind all of this is Korean-American star chef Edward Lee, the head chef of the gala dinner, who was also the guest chef for the 2023 Korea-U.S. Summit. Since kimchi cuisine went viral worldwide after the dinner during the 2005 edition of APEC in Busan, many are wondering what the next kimchi may be, and Lee answers.
I can't pick one favorite, but I hope the guests come away with a sense of history and a sense of like the whole landscape of Korean cuisine. And we really want to feature special ingredients, you know, like we're featuring gamte, persimmon, pine nuts, you know, these to me are really symbolic.
A fusion of Western style combining traditional doenjang paste and rice cake with caramel made the dinner even more unique. That was even served in the mother-of-pearl box so the guests could take home a lasting memory. Lee stressed his goal was to introduce traditional Korean food in a modern, innovative way.
There's a beautiful history of Korean food that I don't want to change. There's another part of Korean food that's really innovative. I wanted to show how Korean ingredients can adapt and be innovative and really capture a global audience. People will go away and remember Korean cuisine as something that is just really, you know, layered and subtle and delicate.
The paired dinner drinks have also drawn attention. One standout was the toast drink, Horangi Yuzu Korean rice wine, that won first place in the Agriculture Ministry's competition for toast drinks last September. As the dinner drinks chosen back in 2005, including Bokbunjaju, Korean blackberry wine, saw explosive growth afterward, even leading to export deals, expectations are high once again for this year's selection. And as the meal and paired drinks were showcased to a wide range of people, including leaders of APEC members, K-Food's global momentum seems to show no signs of slowing down. Park Go-na, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
And that wraps up our coverage of APEC 2025 Korea for now. We'll stay here on the ground in Gyeongju through the end of the day, bringing you the latest from this year's APEC leaders meeting. Doyan, we will be back with more at 12 p.m. Korea time. Back to you, Doyan.
All right, Dami, thank you. And a thanks to you as well, to our team in Gyeongju, working around the clock to bring us the latest on APEC. Now, on other news, the LG twins have done it again, reclaiming the Korean series title for the second time in 3 years. They powered past the Hanwha Eagles 4-1 on Friday, dominating the fixture and sealing the series in 5 games at Daejeon's Hanwha Life Ballpark. The victory caps off a dominant season for the Twins, who also finished first in the regular standings, earning what's known as a unified championship in Korean baseball. It's the Twins' 4th KBO championship, following earlier wins in 1990, 1994, and 2023. Seoul's major nightlife areas such as Hongdae and Itaewon overflowed with people celebrating Halloween on Friday night. Hongdae in Mapo district drew 110,000 people between 9 and 11 p.m., nearing the pre-2022 Itaewon crowd crush numbers. Large screens on the streets flashed extremely crowded warnings. Itaewon, the site of the 2022 tragedy, saw its alleyways packed with more than 11,000 people by 10:30 p.m., with subway trains skipping the station after 11 p.m. Despite some tense moments, such as crowds bumping shoulders and surging in narrow spots, no major incidents were reported. The government's online administrative services have been restored to over 90% following the fire at the State Data Center back in September. The Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters says all 40 Grade 1 services, those considered most essential, are now back online. During a meeting of related officials on Friday, Interior Minister Yoon Ho-jung said that the government will complete the restoration by the end of November. That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.